When we think of a typical governmental election in any given country, whether it be gubernatorial or at a national level, we usually do not imagine it to be, well, a clown show. Just a number of nondescript political candidates wearing suits, making promises of improvement in areas such as taxation, city or national budget allocations, etc., in which they'll most likely hastily forget about once they actually get elected. And the island nation of Japan is unfortunately no exception to this, with just how relatively boring the nation's political scene is for the most part. And although I'm no expert, I probably know this rather bland nature of Japanese politics better than the average person, as I majored in global political economy at the Department of Political Science and Economics at a Japanese university, spending years studying Japanese politics. But with that said, there is one distinct Japanese political phenomena that's actually quite fascinating, or at least somewhat entertaining in the sense that it will at least give you a bit of a good laugh when you're having a bad day. And that is the type of political candidates that appear in the Tokyo gubernatorial elections, which happens every 4 years in Japan.
総理、増税をする前に、その腕につけてるロレックスのデートだから先に売らんかい！この国で生きてても人生辛いことばっかり。人生は悲劇だ
！The time was after Second War. Japan was fucking confusing, and I was confusing too.
この国は最悪だ。私には建設的な提案なんか一つもない。こんなくだらない国はもはや滅ぼす以外にない。改革なんかいくらやったって無駄だ。ぶっちゃけて言えばもはや政府転覆しかない。私が当選したら奴らはビビる。私もビビる。どうせ選挙じゃ何も変わらないんだよ。
たったたったたったたったたったたったたったテレビの前の皆さん、スマイル。10度、20度、30度、10度、20度、30度、10度、20度、30度、10度、20度、30度。ナマステ。スマイル。
And the recent 2024 Tokyo gubernatorial election was no exception when it came to producing a number of, let's just say, its rather unique set of candidates running to be the next governor of Tokyo.
ここまで来たのは君のため
But perhaps the gubernatorial candidate who received the most amount of public attention in the 2024 elections, both domestically as well as internationally, was the candidate from the Watch My Cute political broadcast party, Uchino Airi. On June 27th, 2024, in the NHK live election campaign broadcast, where the entire nation of Japan was watching, she stripped off her clothes in front of the camera, leaving her with only a skin-colored tube top on. Many media sources actually blurred the tube top portion when reporting, which somehow made it worse in terms of how it looked, due to the skin-colored tone of the clothing. So then the question has to be asked, why on earth did she pull this off? Was it perhaps because she had some grand political message that she wanted to get across to the Japanese people and just needed the extra something to attract attention and actually get people to listen to what she has to say in order for her to be the next governor of Tokyo? Well, the best way for us to find that out is to watch the entirety of our 6-minute live broadcast.
東京都知事候補者、かわいい私の政見放送を見てね、内野愛理、31歳。
やっとみんな会えたね。どうも、私がかわいいで有名な内野愛理です。今、かわいいと思った？カメラの前のあなた？そう。あなたよ。カメラさん、そんな目で見ないで。可愛いからってダメよ。やだ。こんなに見つめられちゃって恥ずかしい。私は愛理。うちの愛理。 知ってる人は知っている。知らない人は覚えてね。LINE の QR コードを公開してるので、私とお友達になってください。うちの愛理。うちの愛理。どうですか？そろそろ覚えられたかな？うちの愛理チャンネル。うちの愛理チャンネルで検索して。そこから LINE の QR コードからお友達になって、私と楽しいことしよう。はあ、暑いね。緊張で、もう、暑くて困っちゃうわ。可愛いだけじゃなくて、セクシーでしょ。どう？やだ。そんな目で見ないで。うちの愛理。そろそろ覚えた？うちの愛理です。皆さん、LINE のお友達登録してね。ちゃんと一人一人、心を込めてお返事するので、メッセージ待ってます。愛理って名前、すごく可愛いと思わない？名前だけじゃないよね。顔も、声も、なんなら、仕草も可愛いんじゃない？知ってる。ありがとう。可愛いでしょ。やだ。そんな、エリーさんこっちのこと見ないで。恥ずかしい。そんな目で見られたら、困っちゃう。カメラの前のあなたも、今、変な目で見たでしょ。私のこと。恥ずかしいから、続きは、後で。キャッアイリーって言葉知ってる？すごく可愛い言葉なの。嬉しい、楽しい、幸せって意味の言葉。私も、アイリなの。すごく幸せな女ってことだよね。やっぱりみんな、私とお友達にならないのってすごくもったいないと思うの。だって、こんなに可愛くて面白い女なかなかいないよ。政見放送の収録中にお腹鳴る人あんまりいないよ。ね。みんな私と友達になんなきゃダメだよ。うちの愛理。ちゃんと覚えた？好きな食べ物は、お肉、お魚、げんこつうなぎ。覚えてね。うちの愛理。みんな検索してね。本当に？覚えた？うちの愛理だよ。うちの愛理。じゃ、ごめんなすって。
東京都知事候補者、かわいい私の政見放送を見てね、内野愛理さんの放送でした。
Now, we wanted to share the full broadcast, as we did not want to look as if we were cherry-picking the things that she said within her speech. And with that said, we believe all of us can now agree on the fact that there is absolutely no political message set from her part whatsoever, let alone some profound message. She just continues repeating her name, constantly reminds everyone to remember it, as well as ingraining the idea to the audience that she's not only cute, but also sexy, and to scan her QR code so that they can talk and become friends. This is literally the entirety of her speech. So then, why does she want all of us to remember her name so much if she has no intention to become the governor of Tokyo and is not even sure of whether she'll pursue politics after this election campaign? Well, the truth was actually embodied in the QR code that Airi shared during her live election broadcast. Now, she repeatedly asked the viewers, which in this case were the Japanese voters, to add her on the Messenger app line through the QR code that she shared and become friends with her. But then, to the disappointment of many of the Japanese voters, we are assuming voters mostly of the male gender living in Tokyo who hastily added her as a friend online and were excited for this potential friendship between them and Airi. A generic friendship is not what Airi really wanted. If you were to add Airi's QR code shown on her campaign poster, it actually did indeed lead you to what seemed to be Airi's personal line messenger account. And it does seem to be the case that many in Japan did try to add Airi on the Messenger app, as people soon were not able to become friends with her online, as Airi has already reached the limit of friends that she could receive on the app, which as of now line has set as 5,000 friends. So with that said, due to the sheer number of people who contacted Airi after her live election broadcast, it does seem to be the case that she could not reply to everyone who sent her a message. But to people who did manage to get a reply from her, we are going to be guessing that there would be basic self-introductions back and forth between Airi and the person who messaged, such as how old they are, what city they're originally from, what they do for a living, etc, etc. And when the time comes, when they introduce what their occupations are, Airi most likely told the person of what she does, which is the fact that she runs a small bar at Nakano by the name of Bar Idea, literally titled after her name. Then you guys can probably imagine how the conversation would flow from that point onwards. Her replies would most likely get slower, as she, without exaggeration, did have around 5,000 new friends on the Messenger app who are probably waiting for her to text back. So how if the particular Tokyoite who messaged her wanted to talk to her a bit more, they may just perhaps consider visiting her at her bar in Nakano, or she might not even have directly told them to visit her bar. The simplest Google search or the very bio page of her Twitter account shows that she's the owner of Bar Idea and the exact shift hours when she'll be working for the month. So for some people living in Tokyo who wanted to have a deeper, or as Airi would put it, a more heartful conversation with her, they might just voluntarily head to her bar for a meal and a drink. And it is not like as if she ran some extremely overcharged scammy establishment. She apparently charges 1,200 yen for either a tomato or a cream-based pasta, and 500 yen for the more basic appetizers. She charges 25,000 yen for a bottle of champagne, which for the whole bottle, although definitely higher than the retail price, is still far from the scammy host club type establishments in Japan that are trying to charge 1,000 plus, or sometimes even 10,000 plus USD for a bottle of champagne to their visitors. And if you plan to travel to Japan in the future, you can indeed see Airi if you head to her bar for a drink on one of the days when she's on shift. So there you go. On the facade, this seems to be our answer. She took the risk of unclothing herself on live Japanese television in front of millions of viewers so that she could indirectly advertise her business establishment that is named after herself. And we also initially thought that this was the primary reason for her stunt as well. However, we still have to ask, was this actually all worth it for Airi? And was this really the only reason for her stripping at one of the nation's biggest political elections? In an interview conducted during her governor campaign period, there is a video of her crying multiple times due primarily to the harsh criticism that she received from the Japanese public. And to be brutally honest, we cannot totally blame some of the people in Japan for chastising Airi's actions. Where she conducted her act of unclothing was not for some kind of a TV commercial. It was not only in front of an adult-only audience. She did this literally at a NHK, which is essentially Japan's equivalent of the BBC, election campaign broadcast with no age restriction, meaning many young children would also have watched her live broadcast. Furthermore, she absolutely made no attempt whatsoever to discuss anything that was even remotely related to what the broadcast was actually supposed to be about, which was for the gubernatorial candidates for the 2024 Tokyo governor race to state their aspirations and pledges regarding what they plan on doing if they're to be voted as Tokyo's next governor. As in, she could have at least perfunctorily just said one sentence regarding governmental policy, such as how she plans to decrease income tax for citizens of a certain income bracket, and so on.
世界で2番目に億万長者の多い都市はどこでしょうか？ ブッブー。答えはここ、東京です。お金持ちは敵ではありません。お金持ち優遇で富を豊かに。
As ridiculed as he is, even the Joker candidate still gave a pledge on what he would do once he became the governor of Tokyo.
一番問題のある町は港区です。港区に住んでる奴が調子に乗りすぎて腹立つという問題がありますね。そこで私が都知事になったらこういたします。港区と足立区の名称を入れ替えて、港区のことは今後、足立区と呼ばせることにいたします。港区女子のことは皆さん今後、足立区女子って呼んでください。私が当選したらこういたします。西武新宿駅の名称を変更し、今後は立ちんぼ売春駅という名称に変更いたします。
But Airi did not even make the slightest of attempt to take any action that would remind the people who are watching her on television that she was a gubernatorial candidate. And when it comes to the was it worth it question regarding the advertising effect that the live broadcast had on the sales number and increase in popularity of her bar, well, although not definite, the answer seems to be a no. Ever since her act of unclothing in the Tokyo gubernatorial elections in June 2024, there were literally two additional Google reviews written from customers ever since then. And in table log, her bar still only has 3 total reviews, with all reviews written before her election broadcast. Now, not everyone in Japan who visits a bar goes around writing their reviews on Google Reviews or other relevant online websites, so let us keep that in mind. However, it is still also safe to state that her act at the live NHK broadcast did not have some nation-shaking, incredible advertising effect for her bar, as many may believe, especially when in consideration of how every candidate running to be the governor has to make a deposit payment of 3 million yen for their candidacy slot, which in Airi's case would have somewhat been considered as a business investment. And it is hard to say that from a payoff standpoint, the additional customers that she received at her bar post-election broadcast was worth the 3 million yen deposit payment. And even if it did, we still cannot holistically say for certain that this was worth all the domestic as well as international disdain that she received for her conduct. And although she does hide it relatively well, seen from her tears, a degree of mental damage. And here is where we have to get into the deeper side of the story that not many people know. It turned out that Airi was in a severe state of debt by the time 2024 arrived. According to Airi, the Pokemon card shop that she opened, also inside the Nakano ward, as in the case of her bar, recently went bankrupt, and she said that she had around 3 to 4 million yen in debt, in which she was relying on her parents to pay off. But during her time of financial despair, someone approached her with what seemed to be a helping hand. Tachibana Takashi, the leader of the anti-NHK party. Now, if we get into the very details of who Tachibana is, this video is going to be more than an hour long, so we are not going to do that. But in essence, Tachibana initially made a name for himself in Japan by utilizing the people's anti-NHK sentiments and the broadcasting agency's whole act of going around to people's houses and forcing them to pay television fees, found a degree of political success in the late 2010s, only to have now become one of the most detested political figures by the Japanese public for all the myriad types of annoying, borderline criminal, and sometimes downright criminal acts that he has conducted in the recent past. And now getting back to the relationship between Airi and Tachibana, Airi confessed in an interview that she actually knew Tachibana all the way back from 4 years ago. Airi has not opened her own bar yet at the time and was working at a bar in Akasaka where Tachibana frequently came as a customer. They stayed in touch, and sometime in early 2024, a few weeks before the Tokyo elections, Tachibana visited Airi at her bar in Nakano. He did not come alone, by the way. He also brought along one of his fans, who, with Tachibana's help, was running for governor in the upcoming Tokyo elections. They then persuaded Airi to also consider running for governor. Tachibana told her to not worry about the 3 million yen deposit payment that all gubernatorial candidates have to make, as he said that he has already found a sponsor who was willing to pay the deposit payment for Airi. Now, we do not know whether Airi received any additional compensation from this sponsor other than the 3 million yen deposit payment required to run for governor. But with that said, Airi said that when she heard all of the cards that were handed to her by Tachibana, she thought that this was the chance to finally get herself out of debt, so decided to run for the election. However, this sponsor did not finance Airi's election campaign for absolutely no reason. They had certain demands that they wanted Airi to meet, which was for her to aid in in indirectly promoting the sponsoring company through her presence as an influencer and the platform that was given to her as a result of being a gubernatorial candidate. Now, there are two speculations in Japan regarding who Airi's sponsors exactly were. One was first a small freshwater eel specializing restaurant in Nishi Shinjuku. If you have thoroughly watched the entirety of Airi's live campaign broadcast, you know, as hard as that is, you'll have noticed that Airi has three types of food that she likes to eat: meat, fish, and genkotsu unagi. Now, the interesting thing about this is that when it comes to the meat and fish side of things, she uses the most general words for them with plain and simple oniku and osakana. But then suddenly, when it comes to the eel side of her culinary liking, she actually could not be any more specific, as genkotsu unagi is a type of freshwater eel product that is literally only served in one specific restaurant location in all of Japan. As in, if you have a friend from Japan, go up to her or him and ask, "Do you like genkotsu unagi?" We can guarantee you that their answer will most likely be something along the lines of, "What on earth is genkotsu unagi?" And in the Article 235 of the Japanese Public Office Elections Act, it is specifically stipulated anyone who advertises a specific product or business in an election campaign broadcast or election poster board shall be punished with imprisonment for not more than 5 years or a fine of not more than 1 million yen. And to add fuel to the fire, the specialty freshwater eel store in Nishi Shinjuku have put out a support campaign for Airi, saying that because the restaurant supports Airi, for anyone who followed the restaurant on Twitter and wrote the comment, #Uchino Airi, they'll be selling their genkotsu unagi at the discounted price of 500 yen. Airi herself soon retweeted and promoted this ad on her own Twitter page. And of course, Tachibana, the mastermind who most likely came up with this whole idea in the first place, promptly retweeted Airi's tweet saying, "Genkotsu unagi, I want to eat it." So needless to say, many in Japan criticized Tachibana, Airi, and the unagi restaurant for violating the Article 235 of the Japanese Public Office Elections Act. As to exactly why they have not yet been punished, there are several guesses in Japan, such as how Tachibana, as stupid as he acts, have actually somewhat thought all of this out to make sure that this stealth advertising can go unnoticed by the legal department of the Tokyo elections by making this restaurant start the Support ID campaign 2 days after the Tokyo gubernatorial elections have already finished. So many Japanese people question the restaurant of what the hell they were actually supporting, as the elections have already finished and the voting results for all of the candidates have long already came out. But then, exactly because they did all of these shenanigans after the elections and not during, the legal department of the Tokyo elections could have just not been bothered to follow up on this matter, as it won't have any direct impact to the results of the elections anyways. So making sure that the laws are enforced is definitely an area where the Tokyo Elections Committee do have to step up a bit more. And unfortunately, this specialty freshwater eel store was not the only company that was alleged to have sponsored Airi's election campaign. So who are they this time? A rather scammy dating smartphone app. This could partly explain why Airi's live election campaign speech literally had no mentioning about policies or future plans as a governor, as such discussion was of no interest whatsoever from the perspective of our sponsor. Being a dating app that is primarily targeted towards men, they most likely wanted Airi to dedicate the precious 6 minutes of live airtime that she was given on national television towards attracting national level clout, lean as much as possible towards female sex appeal, and have as many Japanese voters as possible to scan the QR code that was advertised by Airi.
皆さん、LINE のお友達登録してね。
But then we may think, didn't the QR code directly link a person to Airi's private LINE account? How is this related in any way to promoting the dating app? And here is where the really scammy part that angered much of the Japanese public begins to get uncovered. First of all, it is true that the QR code that Airi shared led the person to Airi's LINE Messenger account. However, the problem was that not all of such of Airi's QR codes, especially the ones plastered all over some government poster boards led by Tachibana, connected you to Airi's DMs. These campaign posters, although it had the name of Airi's political party written on it, Watch My Cute Political Campaign, when one scanned the QR code of such of Airi's election poster, the person was then directed to a smartphone dating app where you had to pay money in order to talk to the beautiful woman as seen on the poster. We believe we all do not have to be rocket scientists to know that most of the replies that you get on the app are going to be AI generated or just some random part-time worker who's working on minimum wage posing as a woman. Now, the way you differentiate between which of the posters on the government campaign board actually led to Airi's line account and which one led to the fraudulent dating app was of whether the photo on the poster was that of Airi herself or some AI-generated looking individual. Now, the legal and ethical problem of blatantly utilizing an election poster board for private financial gain aside, although those issues themselves are a very serious issue, there's a larger potential danger to such legal loophole regarding the usage of the Tokyo Gubernatorial election poster boards. The harmful effects that this could have towards the more innocent-minded, creditless children and teenagers. This government poster board in front of the Nakano Ward government office building, for instance, has Airi's campaign poster plastered all over the board. And the huge problem with this is that this location also has a return box nearby where many elementary and middle schoolers come to return the books in which they have borrowed from the Nakano Public Library. And you guys know how the new generation is like. Most of them have a smartphone now and can easily scan this QR code out of curiosity. Then the hormone-driven middle schooler, who's yet to have much life experience, starts talking to whom he thinks is this beautiful girl from the app, gets immersed into this endeavor. Then bad things could absolutely happen on a subsequent basis, such as the teenager putting in their parents' credit card info to continue the experience, and so on. And if such legal loopholes and what Tachibana himself describes as poster business regarding the Tokyo gubernatorial elections does not get amended for the better on a prompt basis, then who knows? In the next Tokyo elections in 2028, Tachibana might once again hire a woman in debt such as Airi, who's willing to go along with his ideas, persuade her to run for the governor of Tokyo position, then have her go on to unclothe herself on live national television in order to attract clout and conduct stealth marketing. And although many citizens in Japan do enjoy getting a good laugh and entertainment,
政治家の給料は片山さつきの毛量ぐらい多いのに、我々国民の家計は舛添洋一の毛量ぐらい寂しい。
もはや政府転覆しかない。
and sometimes even a message of hope.
Power to the people! Power to the people! Power to the people! I like to tell something.
From many of the minor candidates of the Tokyo gubernatorial elections, history repeating itself of a female governor candidate stripping herself in front of children, the elderly, everybody is most likely not what the majority of the Japanese voters want to continue seeing in the nation's biggest direct democratic election.